like Hello Kitty, you don't. You like Pokemon, you don't, right? That can only take you, I think, so far. And a litmus test of some of those games are equally, I guess, divisive. And there is a niche of folks within video games that do like that stuff. I say it's probably a much greater percentage of people that play video games that have, the niche of enjoying Japanese culture is larger inside the population of video gamers than it is the general population. But it's still a niche, right? So the failure for Japanese games to grow up alongside the Western audience as video games became very popular in the United States is probably something to be reckoned with. Couldn't agree more, Kato, and think you're absolutely right. Second thing Kato mentioned, and this was hearkened upon again and again and again, and I'm not even talking about all the iterations, but it's the last contribution I'm going to mention. Formulas. They have a stock formula for making a successful game, and they haven't been able to break out of those formulas. It doesn't even necessarily mean that they haven't been innovative. I think you guys understand what I mean by that. The Japanese have been very innovative in terms of what a game should be. Ask, Miyamoto what a game should do in 1985. I'm not sure there's much of a difference in what Miyamoto would say a game should do in 1995 or 2005. I think he would say the same things. His experience might be a little different, but I think he would argue that games should be doing the same kinds of things. Would someone say that in America? Would someone say that in the West? I'm not sure. So I think the Japanese have innovated in games, but that doesn't mean that they've split from the formula. And one of the things I love about that is looking at, say, the characters of a Final Fantasy game, the way that Sonic Rose did, the way several of you did. I know Kato mentioned Final Fantasy VIII as being the downfall, right? I think this is very important. Look at the Final Fantasy characters a la the Super Nintendo era, the golden age of the JRPG. And then look at them now. They're freakish and scary to Western audiences now. I'm not saying there are some that are cool and they stick, but they only stick kind of with the niche. They don't really stick with the mass population the way that they used to, right? It just doesn't work. So that's got to be mentioned too. The formulas that people have gone through, the way that they've made games year after year is a problem. And someone even mentioned the idea of franchising and that Nintendo is successful because it knows how to franchise. Other people are not successful because they don't know how to franchise. Might be true. I mean, even some of the more successful franchises. Look at Capcom with Mega Man or Capcom with Resident Evil, for example. Resident Evil 4 is one of the most successful, I think it probably is the most successful Resident Evil game, and justifiably so because it kicks ass. One of my favorite games of the last 10 years, easily. But I don't know. There's something to the idea that Japanese folks don't know how to franchise well, which might have to do with their business culture, might have to do with their marketing culture, I'm not sure. But now that I've finished with that a little bit, I want to ask another question here, or let's dig a little deeper. I'm not sure any of this, guys, really answers the question. Because remember, Kojima is who I cited last time as being the latest entrant in bashing Japanese video game makers. He's not necessarily referencing the popularity of video games, although you can make an easy argument about that being directly correlated, and I agree 100%. He's making an argument about the quality and the innovation and the experience of Japanese games and Japanese game developers. And so I think that all of you have hit some very, very good points. But what I want to say is I'm not sure it really gets to the heart of the question, which I think should be, why is it that Kojima can say, we can't make a good game to save our lives? Not we can't make a popular game, because Kojima has made plenty of popular games, by the way. But we can't make a good game to save our lives. I'm a challenge you, my fellow Japanese game developers, to try to make games that don't conform to the Japanese way and might be able to benefit from some of the more American ways of creating video games. That's the challenge. That's what I was trying to get at with the question. And I'm not sure I have a good answer for it. And I'm not sure even after all the stuff that we've talked about, which is fantastic, great observations, I'm not sure I can make any better statement. Except for the fact that you make a correlation between something that's popular and something that's good, right? And I'm not sure any of us want to make that argument. Although, I mean, I could give it a shot, but you guys know me. I wouldn't hesitate to give a shot to almost anything. Yeah. So, what do I think? That's where I guess all of this is leading. I'm gonna go ahead and throw something out there. I'm gonna give something that's probably not very politically correct. Because I think it's important to tell the truth about these things. And, you know, the Wringer is here so I can talk to you guys very honestly. You're very honest with me. I'm going to be very honest with you. There might be a few things that get floated around here that some of you folks might think is not PC. That's okay. You know, take it out with me. Send me, you guys are always welcome to send me an email. Many of you do. Send me personal messages. Many of you do on the site. Go ahead, go for it. Let me know what your feelings are if you end up being offended by any of this stuff. Or if it inspires you to take up a whole new cross and jump onto the forums and start a new topic, go for that too. I would love to see that stuff. All right. So my thought on this is the following. We cannot ignore the fact that American culture is predominantly a kind of hodgepodge culture. Now, most of the rest of the world, mistakenly, by the way, takes this to mean that Americans don't have culture, which is absurd. Okay? It's absolutely absurd, right? There are tremendous veins of American philosophical and cultural thought. Anyone that spends 5 minutes reading a book would be able to tell you that. Unfortunately, a lot of the world is not willing to do that before they make those kinds of quotes. But I should say, American culture is a lot more kind of indicative of lots of different cultures coming together. I'm not saying that we're all about multiculturalism here, because in a lot of ways we're not, but in a lot of ways we are. You know, I mean, that's kind of in the mantra of what this country's all about being the melting pot, right? Western culture becomes the melting pot, and America kind of stands up as the first one that goes, yeah, we were the melting pot, right? And now everybody kind of gets in that. So Western culture really is a melting pot of cultures. Now I want you to think for a second about Japanese culture. It's very rigid, right? It's very kind of what am I trying to say? Not necessarily modular. What I want to say is, in fact, it's less modular. It's more rigid and hardened and kind of encapsulated in a certain restrictive way. Doesn't mean Japanese culture isn't awesome. Doesn't mean Japanese people aren't acceptant of other cultures, although I think you would find that there is a certain kind of, you know, nose in the air syndrome in Japan. At least that's what most of the people that I have talked to that have been there have said. But here's where it's going to get a little dicey, guys. I happen to think Japanese culture is very, very, very niche-y. And by that, I kind of mean it's a little bit crazy, right? It's a little bit deviant. It's a little bit strange, right? A lot of what makes it very popular with the niche in the West is that it's a little strange, is that it's bizarre. It's off the beaten path. It's not the same stuff you see on Saturday morning American television or the things that we're interested in the West or anywhere else in the world for that matter. Japanese culture is very, very distinctive and prides itself on being that very distinct, cut, and dry way. I would argue that one of the reasons why things have blown up the way that they have and the development model has changed is because Japanese culture was probably only going to take us so far in terms of the creation of video games. Or at least, as Mr. Kettleman talks about, it's only going to get us so far in that niche. Now that gaming is a worldwide phenomenon, there need to be a lot of other cultural models. And there are, right? You know, some of the first-person shooter you guys were talking about, yes, they're American, but there are some great first-person shooters that are not American. Crysis, Far Cry, all the Crytek games. You know, one of my absolute favorites, Serious Sam. those games are not American, but yet they feature an American protagonist, and that's not just for marketing purposes. I think, although I'm not going to say there's nothing to that. There absolutely is. One of the games I love is Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge has a kind of Asian protagonist, and I think that might be a reason that it didn't sell very well. That doesn't mean Americans are racist. It just means that I think people like to play characters that they can somehow make like themselves. That's something that we like to do, right? When I'm playing a first-person shooter, I want to somehow embody this character, even if it's nothing like me. Duke Nukem is nothing like me, okay? I know it's a big shocker to many of you out there. Duke Nukem is nothing like me, but if I'm playing Duke Nukem, I kind of get a kick out of the idea that he's saying these things, and that there's something that I'm embodying that's like Duke, right? Just throwing it out there, guys. So my point is, folks, that American and more importantly Western culture, which is more of a hodgepodge of cultures, is more palatable globally, is more easily, I guess, defined within a model that kind of takes in all different kinds of ways of doing things, rather than the Japanese model, which really hasn't deviated very much in terms of how it's progressed. They still do really produce the Japanese cultural way of making video games, very similar to how they were doing it 20 years ago. And I think at the end that's probably the best answer that I have for you. I don't know what to say other than that. I think all the ideas you guys have complete merit. I agree with all of them. I think that's a part of what's going on. But I think the American model is because we have really embraced video game creation as something that people can legitimately do now. And it is a little rogue, it's a little crazy, it's a little bit beyond what the normal career is. If you ask somebody what they do and they say, oh, I make video games, you're probably going to get more than a few rolled eyes in the crowd. In Japan, it's probably less so that way. But we've kind of accepted it. We've turned it into a university thing now, and people are going there. And hell, I mean, I've even taught one of those courses. So you understand what I'm saying. It's important, all right? And I think we have to look at the cultural differences when we try to make that explanation. Okay, everybody got that? We've had some really deep questions so far, or I guess recently, on the Wringer, and I've been very happy with everything you guys have put forward. Tremendous contributions, and although I would offer one thing, I have no problem with you guys writing novels for comments. Not a problem at all, folks. But please do try to block quote it a little bit. Maybe put a few paragraph breaks in there, because that definitely hurts the eyes. And maybe we'll redesign the whole damn site soon, and it won't be on white, but right now it is, and it really hurts the eyes. So anyway, try to break that up. But I love when you guys are so stirred by something that we've talked about that you're going to write a lot, or you're going to have multiple comments. That's exactly why I started the Weekly Wringer, which I think, as I was talking with Rue about just this week, it's been half of a year, and I have to say, I think the Wringer is an unmitigated success, and it is successful because of all of you. So thank you all very much for that. Now, I want to talk to you all about something as a question for next week's Wringer that is really, I think, going to kick up dust in a very different kind of vein, and that's social networking. Now, full disclosure, just watched The Social Network, which was a very good movie, but it got me thinking about a lot of things. We also had the release of Google Plus on the masses within the last few weeks. We've got, the IPO of Facebook probably staring us down very soon. LinkedIn, which is a social network for professionals, let's say, had its initial public offering a few weeks ago and is tremendously overvalued. Don't get me started. But anyway, the point is, there are some amazing. This is really, I think everyone will be talking about this moment as kind of the social networking moment in internet history, and maybe even worldwide and global history. But I'm interested, after watching The Social Network and after kind of digesting a few of those ideas, I wanted to ask you guys something. with Google Plus coming out there, and I've just got on it, and I'm very excited about it, and I haven't really done anything with it yet, but it's kind of like a reboot on Facebook, which is pretty cool. But this is not about Google Plus, and I'm not interested in hearing how Google Plus is just amazing. Although if you want to build that into your